So at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. Are there any questions out there? Yes.
Yeah, Lisa, I have a question. Okay, so as a motivational speaker, I do a lot of presentations and everything, and I hear a lot of stories, and so based on a lot of stuff that I have heard, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Question number one is this: if a girl is drinking too much, do you think that she is partly to blame for what happened?
So that's a really good question. I'm glad that you asked that. So when two people decide to engage in sexual activity, it's about consent, right? So consent is agreeing to something happening. There are certain conditions that prohibit somebody from consenting. One of those is from being underage. The second is not being able to think clearly. We all know that alcohol inhibits our ability to think clearly. So anybody who is intoxicated, who can't say their name, who doesn't know where they are, isn't able to consent. Consent is what makes a sexual experience positive. So if somebody can't consent, then the person who is continuing to engage in that sexual activity should know that it's not going to be a positive experience for that person. So I would say no, she is not at all to blame because she couldn't know what was going to happen.
Another question I have is this: if she went to his room just to talk, do you think she knew what he was expecting, what he was really expecting?
So that's another really good question. I hear a lot of survivors say, oh, I shouldn't have gone to that place because I didn't know. And some people do think that they're going just to talk. One thing about consent is that if you've given consent in the past, it doesn't mean that you consent again. And at any point, you can withdraw your consent. So for example, if somebody starts kissing you, that doesn't mean that you give them permission to remove your clothes. If you're in a situation, and even if you go to somebody's room and change your mind, I've heard some people say that they've actually gone because they were planning to get together with somebody, and then when they got there, they didn't like how he smelled, or they didn't like, different things, and they changed their minds. So even though both had the expectation that something was going to happen, one person changed her mind, and that's completely okay. When that person, at that point, when the person changes her mind or his mind, then it, at that point, becomes no longer okay for the other person to continue.
Another question I have is this: what if she went home with a guy with the intention of hooking up, but then she changed her mind? Is it her fault for getting into that situation?
So it's the same situation talking about consent. There can be something that you intend on doing, and at any time you can change your mind. And so just to give an example, right? When I asked you to open this box, I knew I was going to fill it with these gloves, right? After you opened it and you created that opportunity for me, could I have changed my mind? Absolutely. I could have walked away. I could have filled it with green slime. I could have filled it with chocolate cake. I could have ruined the box. I think that when you opened this box for me, you thought and you went to believe in me as a really good person, that I wasn't going to do anything too terribly crazy. And I think that when people get themselves into situations that later turn out to be dangerous, they're wanting to believe the best about somebody, and then it turns out to not work out the way that they had expected. In that case, I don't think it's ever the victim's fault for putting herself in a situation. How could she know?
What if the guy is too drunk to know what he's doing? Can he really be blamed for that?
So again, talking about consent, consenting adults know what they're doing, they're aware of their actions. So at any point, if somebody is not aware of what he or she is doing, then at that point it becomes a question of whether both parties are able to consent in what they're doing.
What if the person didn't say no when the other person tried to have sex? Is that consent because they didn't say no?
So there are different ways to communicate with your partner about what's okay with you and what's not. In a good relationship, that communication is ongoing, and somebody who is setting boundaries is going to be able to do them in verbal ways. But I want to let you know that it's very normal for people who are being sexually assaulted to freeze. So there are natural instincts that start to kick in, like losing your voice, feeling almost as if you're paralyzed, and many survivors describe not being able to move, and they want to be able to do more to fight off the person, but they can't, and then they're later mad, and they call this that their body has betrayed them. So that's a very natural response to being in a situation of crisis. It's kind of like a possum playing dead. The thinking and the neurobiology of it is that if I act like I'm not there, if I can't be seen, then the threat won't aggress toward me.
What if a girl starts kissing him and then changes her mind and the guy is too turned on to stop at that point?
So yes, I do hear this a lot, this argument, and a story that I can maybe give you to illustrate this is a story of a survivor who was in a relationship where her husband was raping her. And again, rape is forcing somebody into sexual activity without their consent. And so this was a relationship, they were together, but he was forcing her to do things at times when she didn't want to do that. And so he kept saying, oh, I just can't control myself, you know, I'm sorry I'm doing this to you, and he would apologize. But one time what happened was that he was in the middle of assaulting her, and it sounded like the door was opening. So he stopped, and he listened. Nobody was coming in, he could hear, so he continued. And then there was another noise, and somebody came in. So he jumped up and stopped. And at that point, she realized that he actually did have self-control. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he could stop if he wanted to. It's just that he hadn't had maybe the motivation before that to do that. My topic is going to be the difference between creating opportunity and causing something to happen with your actions. So in order to do that, I'm going to have just a couple of illustrations. For the first illustration, I need a volunteer. Lance, can you be my volunteer?
Absolutely,
awesome.
absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So can I ask you, would you please open that box?
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Everybody give him a hand, not only because he was such a good sport about being volunteer, but because he created opportunity for me. Because I have right here a big bag full of mittens, and I can pour those in now that the box is open. So he created an opportunity for me to fill this box up with mittens. So the question is, if he wouldn't have opened this box, would I have had the same opportunity to fill it? And so the answer is, if he hadn't done that and created opportunity, the mittens wouldn't have gone in, right? The way that this relates to sexual assault is sometimes people think that they've caused something to happen. Maybe they've been drinking, maybe they went to somebody's room, maybe they met up with somebody that later they wish they hadn't. And they created opportunity, but did they cause it to happen? No. So just like if Lance would not have opened this box for me, could I have opened it myself? That's true, I could have done that. Some people create their own opportunity by drugging people, which has happened and it's unfortunate, or attacking somebody, getting somebody alone, finding somebody when they're drunk. And just because that opportunity is there doesn't mean that the person that it happened to caused it to happen or invited it to happen. When Lance opened this box, there was no way that he could have known what I was going to do. In the same way, if I go to a party, I don't know what somebody's going to do. If I start drinking, I don't know what somebody's going to do. So just because I do something and a bad thing happens, it doesn't mean that I expected or wanted that thing to happen. It means that somebody took advantage of an opportunity that was created, whether by my actions, but I couldn't have known beforehand when I created that opportunity what the result was going to be. So I'd like to contrast that with making something happen. So I have another prop here. So right now, I am going to push this button on this umbrella and cause the umbrella to open. The outcome that I just achieved was the umbrella opening. It was a direct result of my actions. I wanted that outcome to happen, and I'm completely responsible for that happening. Now, if I would have asked Lance to come up here with me while I opened the umbrella, he may or may not have, because he might have known that he was going to get hurt if he was too close to me when I opened this umbrella. So when I choose to do something, I have a responsibility for my own actions. And I have to be aware that what I choose to do may or may not hurt other people. But that's my responsibility. I'm in charge of my actions. I have complete control over them. And so I won't do this in a crowded metro, for example, if there are a lot of people standing around, because I have to be aware that what I might do might hurt other people. In the same way, people, if they're going to engage in sexual activity, have to be aware that what they do may hurt other people. And so everybody who's going to be choosing to do that has to be aware of those types of things. So I hope you're getting the idea. I'm going to give you just one more example, but before I do, I'm in Washington, D.C. Go Washington! Anyone from Washington?
Woo!
All right, woo, yeah, okay. So some of you, I'm guessing, are from a big city. Some of you may be from a rural area, like I am. I was in a really rural, try saying that 3 times, really rural area. So anyway, we had cows for neighbors. We had a buffalo for a neighbor. I'm not joking. Like, we would look at the buffalo when we were going by. So this farm town that I grew up in was great for farmers, but it was horrible for teenagers, and I'll tell you why. Because it was boring. Like, as teenagers, we wanted something really fun to happen, and there wasn't a lot going on that we could do for fun. So one day I was with my friends, and we were trying to think of something exciting to do, and one of my friends said, "Hey, I know, let's prank someone." And we looked at him and we're like, "Okay, what do you mean?" And he said, come on, follow me. So we walked over to the telephone, and so he dialed some random number, and he said, "Hello? Hello? Is your refrigerator running?" "Yes, it is." "Well, why don't you go catch it then?" Ha ha ha! And that was his prank call. And he thought that was funny. And my friends thought it was funny. So he tried it again, and he was calling, okay? And then he got really brave, and after he said, "Why don't you go catch it then?" Then he held out the receiver, and we all could hear this lady, and she was so upset. "Young man, what are you doing? Why are you calling here? I'm going to tell your parents what's going on." So anyway, he got a total kick out of that. That example that I'm using is, I want to let you know that the person who answered the phone, I want to call her Miss 219, okay? When she answered the phone, she created opportunity for my friend to deliver his prank. When she answered her phone, did she know what was about to happen? How could she know? There's no way that she could have happened. Could she have prevented it? I suppose that if she never wanted to answer her phone again, she would never get a prank. Sometimes what happens when people are sexually assaulted is that in order to prevent the same thing from happening again, they go to extreme measures to make sure that that never happens again, right? So if they're afraid of maybe going to a party, they'll maybe never go to a party. So let's go back to Miss 219, right? She's afraid of getting pranked. She doesn't answer her phone. She doesn't hear her friends call. She doesn't hear about the baby that was just born. She doesn't hear about her doctor's appointment that's been changed. She doesn't get to talk with her mother and father about the good things in life. So she's missing out on a lot because she's trying to avoid that one bad thing. People who avoid situations, blanket situations, just because they're trying to avoid a dangerous situation, are missing out on a lot of life. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to be safe. There are ways to be safe, and there are ways to be smart. And if you want to talk, there are definitely places where you can talk about that. But trying to shut yourself off from the rest of the world just because one bad thing happened is keeping you from missing out on some really wonderful things in life. So my hope today is that you're going to see the difference between creating opportunity, which may have allowed something to happen, right, that you didn't want or didn't expect, versus causing something to happen.